Now, before we move forward, it's time to lay down some groundwork. These are the basic expectations that you should have going into this course. First of all, I need to make this really clear, is that this is a course where we're learning skills. We're not learning topics. I'm not teaching you to differentiate. I'm not teaching you about how plants photosynthesize. These aren't topics and facts that we're learning. These are skills that we're developing. So just like you wouldn't expect to be a pro tennis player after spending 10 or 20 hours practicing, you can't expect to be a pro studier by spending 10 or 20 hours just practicing. But you will need to put in effort. You will need to be diligent and committed and practice and have patience. And if you do that, the results will come. However, it's not an instant fix. And that's important to understand because we are so used to just shoveling so much content into our eyes and our ears when we're at school or in class or watching videos on YouTube or wherever it is, that we don't really spend a lot of time thinking about how it is that we develop and learn skills, because it's in a completely different dimension. And when we're talking about skills relating to studying, students will often get confused because they've never thought about the skills relating to studying. They've simply just thought of studying as something that they do. And if this is how you think, again, no fault of your own. It's just the way that the system kind of makes us think. It's kind of the way that we were trained to think about it. But it's not the right way. It's not by far the most efficient way. And it's not the way that I'm going to be teaching you. So remember, not an instant fix. There is a learning process involved, but it's definitely worth it. And the results actually speak for themselves. So I want to tell you a little bit about a few of the students that I've worked with. Few examples of many, just to show you how powerful and impactful the results can be. So I want to talk first of all about a student that I've had called Olivia. Now, Olivia, she's a very good girl. She's very nice. She's very generous. I remember the very first time that I ever spoke with her was actually on Christmas Eve, and we spoke for like an hour and a half just talking about her concerns. She had come out of high school achieving pretty okay, not the best, entered into university, trying to enter into medical school, and just completely bombed. And I'm sure she'll be fine with me saying this because she's doing great now. She didn't have a good time. She was studying a lot. She was getting very stressed about trying all these different techniques from wherever source that she could pull it from. And she ultimately ended up even failing papers, okay? Forget about getting top 1% grades. She actually ended up failing papers. And she did this process of trial and error for 4 years. By the end of the 4 years, she had started making some gains and improvements. But at the end of 4 years of university, after failing to enter into medical school, I met her at the end of this 4 years while she was moving city, going to a different university and changing degrees. I spoke with her, we talked about her concerns, and she worked with me for that summer period for a few months. At the end of those few months, she told me that she had improved more in her ability to study than she had in her entire 4 years combined. Fast forward several months, and Olivia has ended up achieving almost 100% A+ results, 90% and above results for all of her assessments for every single paper that she sat at university so far, achieving results probably within the top 1% of students. So again, this is a student who was, until very recently, was even failing, started applying the right techniques, and now is achieving results that other people are slaving away trying to achieve, and it's easier for her now than it ever has been. And by the way, Olivia also has dyslexia. So if you don't know, dyslexia is considered a learning disability in which your ability to read and write and comprehend words is much more difficult because the letters themselves seem to change and morph. So Imagine studying, and as you're reading, the words themselves become other words. Imagine how confusing that would be. This is what Olivia was struggling with, and even then, in a process of just figuring out the right techniques and the right system that she could use, she's ended up octupling her studying efficiency, getting much higher grades, putting in much less effort, and being overall a lot happier for it. And it's not an isolated case. I've got another student, Conan, who I met after their first year of university. They, again, were doing not that great. In high school, they were a pretty high-level achiever, achieving within the top 10 to 20% of their year group nationwide. Entering into university, not doing poorly, but not doing quite as well as he needed to get into his degree of choice. He worked with me for around 4 or 5 months pretty intensively. And at the end of that, this is now coming to 3 years of time in university after that process, I believe he's actually received A+ for every single paper he's ever sat, which is probably in the top 0.5% of students nationwide. So again, it's a pretty significant result where he is, in fact, he actually messaged me last night saying that he received another A+, another 90% and above result, scoring in one of the most difficult papers of his entire degree. So the results are consistent. I have replicated these results for thousands of students. And if you just do the right thing, you will develop in exactly the way that you need to go. And it doesn't require more effort. And that's the important thing, right? Is that if this is where you are and you're wanting to get towards this goal that's represented by this star, then if you don't have the right direction, then you don't know the most optimal path to get to that goal. So for example, let's say that you're studying 10, 20, 30, 40 hours a week or even more, and you're still not getting results that you want. Maybe you want results in the top 10%, 5%, top 1% even, and you're putting in truckloads of time studying and you just don't know how to get better results without wasting away your entire life, giving up all of your hobbies, giving up all of your friends, your social life, your family time. I mean, how sad is that? This is not necessary. See, when you know the optimal path to get there, when you know exactly what you need to do to cut down on your study time, increase your retention, make you more efficient at exams, that means that instead of this long, arduous path of trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, and then going back on yourself, and eventually giving up because you've just put in so much effort and you can't get there. With this course and with our guidance, you can have a very streamlined development where you try something and you are always hovering along that optimal line. So you can see that in terms of the actual amount of effort it takes to achieve the goal that you want to achieve, it's much less. But the thing is that people don't realize that because they think that time invested in developing the skill is for some reason not as worth it as time invested into just studying a way that they know does not work. But if you stop and think about it, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because you already know that it doesn't work. You already know that it's not going to get you the result that you want to get. And even if it does get you the result you want to get, you know it's not the life you want to live to get there. So it just doesn't make sense for us to be doing things the wrong way again and again and again to try to get this result. I'm sure your goal is not to study a certain amount of hours per day. I'm sure your goal is to achieve a certain result, and you don't really care about studying 10 hours a day. If you could study 2 hours a day and still get the result, I'm pretty sure you're going to pick that option instead because it means you get to actually have an enjoyable life. And that's the idea, is that we spend, instead of 10 hours studying, let's dedicate 1 hour a day developing the skill so that we can save 6, 7, 8 hours a day on the studying and actually achieve the same results. And over time, it means that we're not having to spend an hour a day developing the skill because our skill is already high enough. And now we just are reaping the rewards, right? So when you look at this, over time, what happens with someone who just thinks about studying more hours and isn't willing to invest time in developing their skills, sure, in the initial phases, they may have a little bit of growth and gains, but over time, it's just not anything meaningful and they will quickly plateau and their results are just not going to be good enough. And that's when you start getting stressed, you start feeling anxious. This is when you start feeling hopeless and you just don't know the way to move forward to get the life you want or the results that you want. So instead, what we need to do is make sure that we are maybe sacrificing a little bit of that study time in the short term so that we can over time dramatically overcome that. And yes, you will still plateau eventually, but your overall level is going to be significantly higher than the first person who foolishly decided to just keep doing the same thing that they know doesn't work. And remember, what we're doing is developing our studying ability, and this is transferable across all of your subjects. When you increase your studying ability, it means that you get a higher level of retention. It means that it's more reliable. And by reliable, I'm talking about when the subject material gets more difficult, when the assessments get more curvy and unpredictable, when you're feeling sick, when there's a global pandemic, when things are just going wrong, your studying ability is still high enough to carry you through that safely. You're not crossing your fingers and hoping everything goes well because your studying ability is just hanging in there on the best day. So it increases your retention, it makes it more reliable, and ultimately what that means is that you have more consistently high results. So don't confuse studying ability for just studying hours or studying effort. Remember, it's not about just putting in effort. In fact, if you do it right, you actually put in less effort. It's about developing the skills and the ability to get you there. But again, it's not an instant fix. And the other thing that I need to make very, very clear is that I'm going to be teaching you to study like very few other students study. This is the way that my students study. This is the way that I learned to study. This is the way that most top 0.1% achievers will study, either deliberately or subconsciously. This is the way that they're studying because it's derived from the research that studies how these people learn. And as a result, I'm not going to be teaching you how to study like everyone else in your class. I'm not going to be teaching you how to write notes like everyone else in your class. I'm not going to be teaching you to do flashcards like everyone else in your class. I'm going to be teaching you a way to study that bypasses the need for that is above and beyond that, which means that it's going to be very different. While everyone else just has different flavors of vanilla, you are going to be sitting there with your chocolate. It's going to be different to everyone else. It's going to be different probably to what your even teachers or your parents or your tutors have told you before. This is specialized knowledge derived directly from the neuroscience research as well as the learning psychology research on this field. So don't expect it to be just the same as everything else that you've learned and heard here and there. I can guarantee you that this method of studying is going to be vastly different to what you've encountered in the past, unless you already happen to be in the top 0.1% of achievers using a system like this. But that's statistically less likely. And even then, I am sure you will still be able to gain a lot from this course because of the way that the entire system is set up to support you. But at the end of the day, despite all of this great material that we're going to teach you, the techniques and the strategies that are going to change your life, despite us giving it to you, we can't make the horse drink the water. It's still up to you. It's your responsibility to take ownership of your progress, to be the one that takes control of your situation, that applies the techniques, that seriously practices it, that does the assignments that we set and the homework that we set for you, You need to be the one that takes it seriously, to do the work. If you have questions, it's up to you to ask us your questions and help us help you figure it out. And ultimately, the ownership on making the use of this great resource is going to be on your shoulders. So reach out to us. We are here to help you succeed. And we care a lot about helping you succeed. And you will realize that we care a lot because we are very responsive to your questions, and we're always encouraging you to engage with us as much as possible, because the more you succeed, the better we feel, because you are the type of student that we love working with. So engage with the course, be open-minded, engage with us, the I Can Study team, and together, let's smash your studying ability way out of the park.